the distant future, humanity had achieved what was once thought to be impossible: interstellar travel. Massive, sleek starships powered by quantum engines roamed the galaxies, carrying people from one corner of the universe to another. Yet, despite these great achievements, mankind still struggled with the one thing that had always haunted them: the mystery of time. Dr. Zane Harper, a brilliant physicist at the Institute of Temporal Research, was obsessed with the concept of time. His life's work revolved around the theory that time was not linear, but interconnected in a web of possibilities, an infinite nexus. The idea that there were infinite versions of reality, each branching off from different points in history, fascinated him. He believed that if humanity could master the nexus, they could alter the course of time itself. Not just witness it, but shape it. But despite years of research, Zane had never been able to prove his theory. Until one fateful day, an unexpected breakthrough occurred. The Institute had recently been testing a revolutionary device, the chronosphere, designed to manipulate temporal energy. It was a machine capable of accessing the nexus, though its power was dangerous and unpredictable. The experiment was supposed to be a controlled test, but when Zane activated it, something went terribly wrong. The machine hummed with a deep, resonating sound, and a blinding light filled the room. Zane felt his body being pulled in every direction at once. His vision blurred and his senses distorted. For a moment there was nothing but chaos. Then suddenly, the room grew still. Zane opened his eyes. The lab had vanished, replaced by an unfamiliar alien landscape. The sky above was a deep violet, and twin moons hovered in the distance. The air smelled like ozone, and a soft wind whispered across the barren plains. He was no longer in the Institute, nor was he even on Earth. The chronosphere, which had been safely contained within the lab just moments ago, was nowhere to be found. Zane realized with a jolt that he had been transported not only through time, but to an alternate reality, one that might exist outside of his understanding of the Nexus. His heart raced. What had he done? As he stood there, taking in his surroundings, a voice echoed through the air. It was calm, yet unsettling, like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Welcome, Dr. Harper. You've crossed the threshold." Zane turned to see a figure approaching him, a being of light, with a form that seemed to shift and shimmer as if it was not bound by the rules of physics. The figure stopped in front of him, its eyes glowing with an eerie intensity. "You've unlocked the Nexus, but at a great cost. You've disrupted the balance between the timelines." Zane tried to speak, but his throat felt dry. The figure continued. "Every decision you make now will echo across the fabric of existence. Time is not a path, Dr. Harper. It is a delicate web, and you, in your quest for power, have torn it." The being's form flickered again, and suddenly Zane found himself standing in the middle of a bustling city, but not the one he knew. It was a future Earth, but twisted. Buildings that soared into the sky were crumbling, and the streets were filled with people who appeared to be living in constant fear. The air was thick with smog, and machines of war roamed the streets. "This is one of the consequences," the voice said again. "The future you were meant to protect is now in ruins, and it's only one of many possible futures you've altered." Zane felt his heart sink. He had read about alternate timelines, but experiencing one firsthand was entirely different. He had always thought time was something to be manipulated, something to be bent to human will. But now, standing in the ruins of the future, he realized how fragile it all was. Before he could process what was happening, the figure appeared again, this time in a new form. This time it looked like Zane himself. "This is your future," it said coldly. "A future where your actions have undone everything you sought to preserve." Zane reached out, but the figure dissolved before his fingers could touch it. The world around him flickered, and suddenly he was back at the Institute, standing in front of the chronosphere. It was humming again, its lights flashing ominously. The voice returned, this time with an urgent tone. "You have only one choice now. The timeline must be fixed. You must undo the damage you have caused." Zane's mind raced. He couldn't go back to the future he had seen, nor could he allow the Nexus to collapse. He had to make a choice, one that would either restore the timeline or destroy it completely. There was no more room for experimentation. The power to manipulate time was no longer a tool for progress. It was a weapon, and Zane was the one who had wielded it. With trembling hands, Zane reached for the chronosphere. He hesitated. Could he really set things right? Could he undo the irreversible changes he had made? The weight of his decision crushed him, but in that moment he understood something crucial. Time was not something to control. It was something to respect. He activated the chronosphere, but instead of trying to manipulate it, he focused on letting it guide him, letting the Nexus decide what needed to happen. The machine hummed again, this time with a softer, more harmonious tone. As Zane closed his eyes, he felt a strange peace wash over him. The Nexus had its own way of restoring balance, and with that, everything went silent. When Zane opened his eyes again, he was standing in the same lab, but everything was different. The air felt lighter. The machine, though still present, no longer hummed with the same ominous energy. The world was intact. For the first time, Zane felt like he understood time, not as something to control, but as something to follow. The Nexus had taught him that some forces were beyond human comprehension, and some things were better left untouched. And in that moment, he knew he had learned a valuable lesson. Some questions were not meant to be answered, and some paths were not meant to be walked.